If you asked me a few years ago if I did pre-production for my projects, I would have said yes, but I probably would not have been doing it as well as I'm doing it today. And a big part of that is starting to incorporate Milanote into my organization for every project that I do. I started using Milanote about a year ago to organize all my projects, and the impact that it made on my pre-production process was so significant that I decided to reach out to them and see if they'd be interested in coming on board to support the channel. And they are sponsoring this video, so thank you very much, Milanote. In this video, I want to dive into a particular documentary project that I'm working on and show you some of the ways I organize a particular shoot day using their platform. The project that we're going to take a look at today is tentatively titled Tide of the Day. It is a documentary about a queer fifth-generation Chinese Canadian who is a musician, an artist, and they are exploring their own identity and how it relates to their family's history, and exploring the topics of how do you pass on enough for the next generation to understand where they came from, and make sure that you are carrying that forward for the generations that come after you. So it's a really interesting topic that has a lot of depth, that we needed a way to try to filter down to what was the core idea of this project. And what I want to do is pull open my Milanote project related to this, walk you through a couple of the different boards that I've set up and how it keeps me organized, and then we'll dive into a specific shoot day and the exact things that I do before a day of shooting to make sure I get the images that I'm after. So let's pop over to the computer and take a look at what we're working with. So this is the main board that I'm working with on this project. You can see that I've got some big picture scheduling things that we've listed here, some to-do items for both of us to be working on, and then a bunch of different boards that have specific topics that we want to keep organized. We have this sort of pitch and funding section. This is where we did a lot of our brainstorming, projects that were inspired by other brainstorming. We had tried to do this with Google Docs, and while we still use that for some bits of organization, it was a lot easier to keep everything in one place like this. But the area I want to dive into for this is the shoot days section. And this is basically a build out of our whole film. This will evolve as time goes on, but it's based on our treatment that we were required to produce to get the grant. One of the big parts about pre-production that I've started to appreciate a lot more is forcing yourself to go through certain steps of a process to make sure that you're not glazing over them in a way that doesn't actually help move the project forward. And that's what a treatment really helps do. You need to be able to communicate the overall story arc of your film to the greatest degree that you can. It's not always possible with a documentary to know everything that will happen, but at least a structure that allows you to identify a shooting schedule, shooting locations, who might need to be involved, and all those other moving parts. And so that's what we have on the screen here. It's basically a chronology of the film and where we're going to film, and then we can dive into those individual scenes and break that apart and figure out how to execute it in the best way possible. What we'll look at here is this first scene of the film and the basic template that I use for every shoot that I do. Now we have a brief synopsis, and that basically is saying that we begin with this reflective scene where Holly's at this beach that has significance to their childhood, and we're going to have a voiceover that is contemplative, a bit reflective, maybe a bit dreamy and poetic, and it's going to be reflecting on this idea of, has Holly's ancestors left enough for them to pick up their identity, and will Holly leave enough for future generations to do that? And really wanting to set the film up, but also do it in a beautiful way. We want beautiful dialogue and we want beautiful images, and we set that as our tone for this scene. And from that, I felt that it was more of a slow, contemplative, and beautiful, emotional scene. We might want lots of slow motion images to really bring that feeling to life. And then with that, because it's this dreamy feeling and a little bit meditative, it felt like a blue hour sort of lighting was going to be the most appropriate. And so that's where we started with. And I pulled some images from FrameSet just to get a general mood of this scene. And we kind of committed, this is what this is going to look like. Once I have a basic idea like that, I am really motivated by the visuals and use that as the guiding force for everything. And so I like to work with FrameSet. I've made a video about this in the past of how Milanote and FrameSet work so well together. Now, if I go into my all references, I've already pulled a bunch of additional reference images in here that you can see that are kind of the mood. It's lots of close-ups, hands, feet, walking along the beach, images of a person's face, some writing. Say, we wanted to add something else here. We could search for beach and feet. And let's say this image is something that we want. We can just drag it over and just drop it in right where we want it to be. That is so powerful for me because I can spend a lot of time on FrameSet trying to identify the feeling that I want by looking at reference images, and it moves my pre-production process forward so much quicker than if I was to do that without a tool like FrameSet. And Milanote becomes an incredible way to keep that organized. From there, the next step for me was to create a shot list. And the shot list is really what will dictate what I do on a shoot day with room for creativity to happen, but I want to make sure that these are the shots that I don't forget to get. And I put it at the very beginning of this board so that when I pull this up on my phone, it's at the very top of the screen and I can work through this at a location. Milanote works great on your phone. So I put in here if it's a wide, a medium, or a close-up, and just kind of the rough idea of what I want. Another important part of the day is going to be the schedule. How are we going to actually accomplish all of this in a day? And in some ways, this may be the most important thing to consider if it's a sunrise or a sunset shoot, because you're going to have a really tight time window to get all of the shots you need, and you might need to trim things down to be realistic of what you can actually accomplish. So we knew it was going to be blue hour, and that meant that we were going to have to start quite early. On May 11th, blue hour begins at 4:30 a.m. and we knew we'd want to be shooting by about 4:45. It'd probably be a little too dark right at the start of blue hour. So we arrived at 4:15. We have when our sunrise is happening, we have when golden hour is ending, and then we have when we're wrapping up. So we knew everything needed to happen between basically 4:45 and 6:45-ish. So we had a 2-hour window to accomplish everything that we wanted to get. My equipment that I brought for this was the Komodo X. I brought the C70 as a backup, but I also knew I might want to do some stabilized shots on a gimbal, for sure on a tripod, but I limited how much of that I actually was going to do because I knew it would slow me down. And then everything that we need for props in addition. Most of these things were stuff that Holly brought, so family photos, there were some rice paper letters, jewelry, other things that were going to complement the shoot. We list that all here, and then we have everything that we need for the project on our end to be able to execute. We also needed to get permits to shoot there, so I've got the permits linked here that we were able to acquire for the location and have everything organized for that single day. And if we pop back to our main structure again, we've got another shoot coming up. So this is not fully built out yet, but you can see we've got a bit of a mood board of what we're kind of going for, some of the equipment that we'll need, an approximate schedule of when we'll be shooting. So using these boxes to fill in is what makes me not forget the important steps of the process and make sure that I've thought through everything that's going to ensure that a shoot day is a success. Now I'm working on another project right now that's a narrative film, and we have a crew between 5 and 15 people on any given shoot day. And in this case, everything is storyboarded to the T. We know exactly what shots we're getting. We almost know exactly what they're going to look like. We know what actors need to be on set. We know what crew we're going to need, and have thought through all of those pieces because the amount of time it takes to build a set, to get everybody on location is quite substantial, that we need to make sure that everything is perfectly dialed in to execute that well. And again, that's where Milanote thrives. It allows you to build out what that storyboard is going to look like and work through that pre-production process of this needs to all happen before shoot day, or we're not going to be successful. And I think that's the part that I've started to really appreciate about pre-production, is forcing myself to think through the stuff that I've left to chance before. And oftentimes chance is in your favor, but when things are stressful or the time is short to be able to accomplish something, or the cost is high potentially, it's really important that you have thought through what you need to accomplish at a bare minimum. And then if there's room for creativity within that schedule, outside of what you've planned for, by all means, get that good stuff that you've found on the spot. But there's usually a certain amount of things that you have to have at the end of the day. So pre-production is something that I've come to actually enjoy with the combination of Milanote and Frameset. They just work so well together as a tool for a cinematographer or a director to pre-visualize what they want to create and then communicate that to their team to pull it off in a beautiful way. So I hope seeing a little bit behind the scenes of how I plan a given shoot day helps you understand what you may want to add or change in your process. For me, all of this is a continual iteration. Every time I do a shoot, I realize, oh, I didn't need to do that, or I did need to do this, and I update my process. And I think eventually I'll get to a place where I'm really happy with what I'm doing, but I think it's always going to be evolving as you learn more and as you become a more experienced cinematographer, director, whatever role you're kind of fitting in. As always, thank you for being here. I really appreciate you following along with the channel. Thank you, Milanote, for sponsoring this video, and I look forward to seeing you all in the next one. Peace.